So good morning and welcome to Wake Up America Ministries. We have a very informative word for you this morning, and we're going to give this another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Um, but we call this Who's Fooling Who? So it's going to start off sounding like a political thing, but I promise you, by the time we're done, we're going to tie this in to Revelation 13, and, uh, and hopefully we'll get a better understanding of possibly what's going on, or at least the groundwork that's being laid for future development. So, as soon as I get um, the word, we'll go forward with it. So, we good to go? All right, so here we go. If you go to the UN website and you try to find out how many countries there are in the world, there's going to be 193 voting members rather, member countries in the United Nations that have voting rights. And then there's two more countries that are basically have an observer status, but they don't have voting rights. And then there's some other countries out there that are not recognized by the United Nations as being a sovereign nation. And I'll give you an example. Taiwan is one of those. Taiwan is not a member of the United Nations because China claims sovereignty over Taiwan. And then Kosovo also is not recognized. Those are just two of them. And then there's some others names that I can't even pronounce. But anyway, so depending on what website that you look at, there are possibly as many as 215 nations in the world. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they all have an independent functional government or a president or prime minister or whatever. But anyway, so if you know how it is when you Google something, you get a wide range of answers. But for the purpose of today, just so we understand the gravity of what we're going to be talking about, we're looking at basically 193 nations. Now, starting today, May 22nd, and running through May the 28th, the World Health Organization is having, I guess, what you call a summit, and hopefully the rain will hold off so it don't get too loud. But anyway, they're having a summit, and in this summit, it's going to be including a global pandemic treaty, which we're going to talk about here for a few minutes, and I'm going to read a few things to you so that you'll be aware of what this treaty how it can possibly affect us here in the United States. And of course, globally, now that's important to remember, globally around the world. So remember this, that there's, I believe, 191, maybe all of the, depends on what you read. One thing I read said there was 191 nations that were members of the World Health Organization. I read another thing that said that every nation that's in the United Nations is a member of the World Health Organization. And that if a treaty is passed, that basically there'd be 191 to 193 nations going along with what this treaty has to say. So now I'm going to read a few things here to you, so be patient with me. I promise you we're going to tie this in here shortly. So this is an article, or part of an article, from Israel 365, and it was written, and it says the World Health Assembly, which is a part of the World Health Organization's governing legislative body, will be voting on Provisional Agenda Item 16.2 in Geneva on May 22nd. The agenda, described by the WHO under the headline, Strengthening WHO Preparedness for and Response to Health Emergencies. The new agenda would give them the power to unilaterally declare a health emergency in any country thereby giving them emergency powers. The Biden administration gave these proposed amendments to the WHO on January the 18th. No one knew this until April the 12th, less than a month ago. If passed, the resolutions will go into effect in November. It said these amendments will empower WHO's Director General to declare health emergencies or crises in any nation and do so unilaterally and against the opposition of the target nation. The Director General will be able to declare these health crises based merely on his personal opinion or consideration that there is a potential or possible threat to other nations. It says these regulations are a binding instrument of international law. In other words, once you sign on to it, you are obligated to obey. All right, so I want to read part of another article just to show that this is not a one-sided thing here. So this is another article that was written by the NOQ report. It's NOQ report. And I'm just going to read a small part of it. And it says, and it's talking about the same thing here. It says, this threat is contained in new amendments to WHO's international health regulations proposed by the Biden administration that are scheduled as provisional agenda item 16.2 at the upcoming conference on May 22nd through the 28th. These amendments will empower WHO's director or Director General to declare health emergencies or crises in any nation and to do so unilaterally and against the opposition of the target nation. The Director General will be able to declare these health crises based merely on his personal opinion or consideration that there is a potential threat. Now, the wording here is almost identical. Now, be patient with me because what we're doing here is we're laying the groundwork. So I found this. This was on abc10.com, an article, and then within this article, it had this this proposal, this provision 16.2. It actually is a 13-page document that again came from Joe Biden's administration to the WHO, making these recommendations with changes. All right, now I'm not going to read the whole thing because we don't have nowhere near the time. You can look it up for yourself, read the whole document. But this is point number 2, and I'm going to try to keep this short. But this is the most critical part because in this article there's like basically 3 sections in it that you need to read. But this is the part that concerns the Director General. It says, if the Director General considers, based on an assessment under these regulations, that a potential or actual public health emergency of international concern is occurring, the Director General shall notify all states parties and seek to consult with the state party in whose territory the event arises regarding this preliminary determination and may, in accordance with the procedure set forth in Article 49, seek the views of the committee. This is the emergency committee. Seek the views of the committee established under Article 48. If the Director General determines, now this is, I'm going to read this the way it was before it was changed, just so you can understand where we're going here. It says, if the Director General determines and the state party are in agreement regarding this determination that the event constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, the Director General shall, and blah, 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 I'm not even going to read all of that, basically make appropriate temporary recommendations. All right, now what I want you to understand is this, because this is the key part, because in this thing that was written back in January by the Biden administration without congressional approval and submitted to the World Health Organization, this is what it says currently. if the Director General determines that the event constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, the Director General shall, in accordance with the procedure set forth in Article 49, seek the views of the Emergency Committee on appropriate temporary recommendations. Now it goes on, if you go read on down, what basically their options are, but as you see in this article, that it is giving one man, and I'm assuming that under the advice of his emergency committee, that he would have authority over nations that join this treaty to basically make recommendations, and once they sign this treaty, that these countries would be under obligation to follow their recommendations. Now, what is that saying to us today, and what in the world does that have to do with a scriptural message? Well, I'm glad you asked, because if you go to Revelation 13, and we're not going to read the whole thing because we just don't have time, but I'm going to read 13, 1 through 4. I'm going to read verse 11 and 12 and 16 and 17. All right, so this is Revelation 13, 1 through 4. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was likened to a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, who is Satan, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now that's 1 through 4, 11 and 12. Now what this is telling us is what? What did you see in this? You saw a one world government being formed. Alright? So in other words, a new world order, or globalism, or whatever other term that they can come up with to disguise the thing that is trying to be accomplished. All right? Now we know that there are people within the United States, people that are in power, that believe in open borders and just come on in, just disregard the laws that we have on how to properly immigrate into this country, and everything else, international trade. I mean, we see that Donald Trump exposed a lot of that, where these trade agreements that we had, they were so unfair to our businesses here, because we were taking in a lot more imports than we were exporting. The object is, when you go into a treaty, is that you want to have the upper hand. But anyway, that's not been so much the case for many, many years. And in this case, it certainly doesn't seem appropriate that our government, our president, his administration, basically doing this by an executive order, would have the authority, without congressional approval, to enter into a treaty with the World Health Organization and basically say that we don't have control over basically medical advice concerning pandemics. I mean, certainly, now we have the CDC, who's supposed to be our leading institution in the United States that leads us and guides us through these kind of things. Needless to say, I think that our confidence in them has certainly been shaken. I know mine has. But certainly, though, we still have hundreds of doctors in this country that are very knowledgeable and could come together and can make an informed decision on pandemics or anything else, health emergencies that would arise within our nation, without exporting this to a foreign entity that's not even within our own country here to make decisions on our behalf. So where is this all going? All right, well, listen to what it says here, because I want us to understand this clearly. Now, I'm not telling you today that the World Health Organization is the Antichrist. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that the table is being set to make the pathway for the Antichrist to come into existence whenever nations allow a world organization to make decisions on their behalf. How easy, I mean, we're doing this without congressional approval. They've tried to keep this quiet, that, it has leaked out. And basically, the people who put these other people in office, who elect them, don't have any say-so in this. And I'm going to tell you, I'm dead set against this. But anyway, I want to just go back to verse 4. It says, and they worship the dragon. It says they, and this is talking about who? The world. And they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And it says, and they worship the beast. Now, 11 and 12. Because that's the one world government. This is 11 and 12. And it talks about another beast. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Now this is that false prophet who, if you've been paying attention or you've been doing any kind of research at all on basically the faiths of the world, you can see where there's a big push for everybody to coexist and to co-worship, to merge Christianity with other religions, and basically under the premise that there's one God. We just call him by many different names. This is going to be one of those things that the false prophet's going to propagate, and that eventually people would fall down and worship the Antichrist, because they're going to sell this line as he is the Christ. But he's not. He's going to be a false Christ, but many people are going to fall for it. So, and it says here, verse 12 again, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth. Now this is not the planet. This is talking about the people, and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. Now, if we read on down, it would say that basically, except for those people whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, would not worship him. All right, verse 16 and 17, this is what it says here. It says, and he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. In other words, 666. So, that's the one world monetary system that we believe is coming. Now, I realize that the Bible does not explicitly say one world government, one world religion, or a one world monetary system. And can you come on to do it for me? Thank you very much. And so what I am saying is this: it's implied, and we see this coming to pass. We've been hearing these phrases now for 30 plus years, and people are, I guess, they're tired of hearing it. It's being rephrased, renamed, whatever you want to call it, to deceive people into believing that this is the new normal. But let me tell you something, folks. This is not a good thing if you are not a believer, because if you are not a believer and the Lord was to come back and take his people home today, you're going to be left behind. It's called the tribulation period, and it's not going to be a very pleasant time for you. And as we're currently seeing food shortages and baby formula and gas prices, I read an article just the other day that there are places in Washington State that they're reprogramming their pumps to go up into how we see it now, where it's like $3 or $4. They're programming their pumps to go up to like $10 and above. So there's an expectation, at least in some places, that fuel prices are going to continue to climb, and that food prices, there's going to be a shortage, and all of this stuff that's taking place right now is just a signal and a sign of what Matthew 24 was talking about. Well, if it is, then that only means one thing. That means that Jesus is coming soon to call his children home, and those of you that are left behind are going to be in a tough spot to live in. And so it says here that how are you going to buy and sell? Unless you are determined to eat weeds and bugs and squirrels and rabbits for 7 years and try to survive that without electricity and various things like that, that's going to be a tough road. And the last 3.5 years of this thing, the tribulation period is going to be way worse than anything that we can ever imagine. It's called the Great Tribulation. So what I'm telling you today is that the table is being set, because what this does, at least in my mind, is that this is a precedent that is setting up the coming of the Antichrist. If it is that easy for nations to just roll over, and the sad truth that Israel's in this. This article that I read from Israel 365 says that Israel is signing on to this thing. So there is a deception that is taking place, and it's disturbing to know that our government is the one who has made this, wrote this agenda to the WHO so they can turn around and tell us what to do. That's disturbing, folks. But anyway, like I was saying, the table is being set. It's paving the way for the Antichrist to come into power at his appointed time. So, what is it time for? It's time for America to wake up. Folks, the clock is ticking. It's running out. Things are changing very rapidly. And I probably didn't even do this due diligence here today, but at least it does give you a place, a starting point, that if you want to research this on your own, that you can, and you can be informed, because we need to be informed, folks, because people's lives count on it. Eternity counts on us giving people a warning, spreading the gospel, getting people saved, not for our glory, but for the glory of the Lord, for the building and establishing his kingdom, Lord, that we can save souls from the pits of hell. That's our job here, and that's why we've titled our ministry Wake Up America Ministry. So this is a wake-up call, folks, that we're being sold out to World Health Organization and others. There's a lot, the International Monetary Fund, the World Economic Forum, all these things, they are not in favor of a nationalist theory or nationalist thinking like Donald Trump was. They are all for global government. So pay attention, folks, because the clock's ticking and we're about to run out of time. Anyway, that's all we have for you this week. We're having homecoming today at the Rock Worship Center. If you don't have anywhere else to be, in a church preferably, come visit with us today, 10:45. We'll be eating afterwards. Don't worry about bringing nothing if you don't have time. I'm sure that our ladies will have plenty of food prepared, and we'd be glad to have you. So 10:45 today. Normally we have Sunday school, but if you don't have a home church, come see us. Anyway, I don't know what she's trying to tell me here.
Old-fashioned.
Oh yeah, and it's old-fashioned day, because normally I don't wear this, so that's why I'm wearing overalls and a shirt, because we have a theme today, and then of course no night service. So anyway, dress up in your old clothes, come looking old countrified if you want to, it'll be okay. But Lord willing, we'll see you next week.